I'll be talking about storms in a little bit where they're unpredictable. And I thought, well, not really. I mean, the Farmer's Almanac causes me now. They change their whole plans to find out when I'm doing an event and they rain it. It's like, hey, let's plan the crops on Marlon's events, Before I always speak, you guys know I always do like a 30-second timeout, but I need to take a full 60-second timeout today because I need to thank some people. I need to thank our senior pastor, Dr. Ike Reichert, because number one, guys, he hasn't taken off hardly any. He's even here today, to support me. And the thing that I want to share about this, guys, he has been through November, Thanksgiving, all the Christmas Eve services. He has been part of our launching off our new series in January. He's done the Easter service, even did the sunrise service. He has done ordination services, baptism services, communion services. This guy can do it all. And we are so blessed to have him as our senior pastor. We now give him a round of applause. He's an example in so many ways, the way that I dress, the way that I do things in the community. He leads every day. And then the second thing that I need to share with you today is I need to thank you again for your support of Love Does. As Ike said in his prayer today, he talked about, this past Monday, we were at Hickory Hills Elementary. We installed our 37th sensory room at Hickory Hills Elementary. Miss Finch is here today, Mrs. Inez Finch. She was the first African-American woman PTA president at Mountain View Elementary, and she wanted to help install the 39th sensory room at Mountain View Elementary. We met there today, or Friday, to start that room. That's going to be one of the most amazing rooms when it's done. This past Friday night, we cooked hot dogs for Blackwell Elementary Spring Fling. And folks, if you go on our website, PiedmontChurch/TV, serve events, you will see how we truly are the first call for help in the community. All the events at which we are going to be involved in and serving out in the community, that's all because of your financial support of Love Does, and that's because of all the way that you show up and help serve and help us make an impact in the community. I was adding it up already. We're already at over 1,000 Nathan's hot dogs that we've got to cook already. Folks, I won't eat a Nathan's hot dog again until July sometime. I don't even want to look at them after a while, but that's all because of the way that you support Love Does. And again, as I just said, thank you for the countless number of ways in which you show God's love to so many people. Thank you for that. Now, one of the key roles of the church is to teach sound theology and a biblical worldview. The family's role is to live out and reinforce sound theology and a biblical worldview to the next generation that is coming up. With every baby dedication that we do here at Piedmont, what do we always say, whether it's Ike, whether it's Daniel, whether it's me, we always, the last thing that we do is we look at the parents and we take a little Bible and we hand it to them. We say, look, it's up to us. We can give you the Word of God, but it's up to you to put the Word of God into the life of your children. And I looked at this quote this week. John Wesley said this: what one generation tolerates, the next generation embraces. So today, let me ask you, if we could flash forward 20 to 30 years into the future, what would you want to see your children passing on to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren? I mean, as you look at the world today, the news that we see every single night, would it change the type of seeds that you're planting so that we can harvest a different and better future? Look at this verse, Psalms 127, 3 and 4. Sons are a heritage from the Lord. Children are a reward from him, like arrows in the hands of a warrior. Children are a reward from God. They are of immense value to us, just like the arrows are to the warrior. Arrows to a warrior are meant to be used, and they are meant to be used effectively. They are meant to hit their mark, right? But not every warrior can direct an arrow to hit the target. Before the warrior can discipline the arrow, he must first learn how to discipline himself. Before he can direct the arrow, he must take the bow, he must learn how to hold it up, bend it, put his eye on the target, take aim. And one thing I've learned is not every arrow that's crooked or bent, it has to be made correctly, can hit the target. We have to learn how to fashion their arrows. Look at the parts of the arrow. There is the shaft. It's meant to be straight and stable. The fletching, which is on the back end. The arrows, which causes the arrow to spin and to stay on target. And then there's the head of the arrow, which is meant to be deadly, which makes the weapon useful. Arrows don't put themselves together. They need to be put together by someone who knows exactly what they're doing. Children who turn out well are not the product of a haphazard home. Bringing up our kids is the most important task that we have in life. We need to study our kids. We need to know what the various stages of which they go through from babyhood to adulthood. We need to know what their strengths are, what their passions are, what they love. And then we need to help them find the right track in which they can run on. What we don't want to pass on to our kids is our unfinished business. We need to personally finish our business with God and allow Him to touch us in our unhealed and unholy places and get those things right with God, or we will pass them on to the next generation and to our grandkids. Because if we don't get that right with God, we will pass on to our kids our hurts, our bitterness, our unfulfilled dreams, our dysfunctional relationships. Our kids need to see God transforming us, doing a work in us to validate what we say we believe in God and what this church says about God. Look at this verse, Psalm 78:5. He decreed statutes for Jacob and established the law in Israel, which commanded our forefathers to teach their children. He established a testimony in Jacob, which is another way to say Israel, which means God's people, us today, the people who live here in Cobb County, Northeast Cobb. And a testimony is a story of what God is doing in our lives. So let me ask you, what is God doing in your life today that you're passing on to your kids, to your grandchildren? Look at this next verses, 6 and 8. So the next generation would know them, even the children yet to be born, and they in turn would tell their children. They would put their trust in God and would not forget His deeds, but would keep His commandments. They would not be like their forefathers, a stubborn, rebellious generation, whose hearts were not loyal to God, whose spirits were not faithful to Him. Now, folks, I don't mean to sound like Steve Holman, the voice of the Atlanta Hawks, after Trae Young hits a three, but bang. Do I need to say anything other than that right there for a reason why we're doing this campaign? Do you need a brochure? Do you need to fill in more blanks? That verse there says it all right there. What this passage is teaching us today is to pass on the right message about God and to pass on a testimony of what God is doing in our lives. We need to be careful not to pass on the promises that God never made. The passage is not promising that our kids will always do the right thing, even if we teach them the right thing. Some parents have gotten disappointed with God because they feel like they did the right thing, and yet their children continue to make bad choices. And I think about that as I was studying that, I was thinking, you know, my mom and dad didn't model some of the mistakes that I made. And my boys that Libby and I have raised, Libby and I haven't modeled them some of the mistakes that they've made, the choices that they made. Proverbs 22:6 reads, train a child in the way he should go, even when he is old, he will not depart from it. That verse is misunderstood. And it puts a terrible load of guilt on a lot of parents. Let me give you a word picture of what that verse means, okay? I want you to picture of how a tree grows. You got a whole bunch of dogwoods. At our home, we have 4 dogwoods in our backyard. None of them are the same. None of them they're bent differently, they're shaped differently, their limbs are different. And in this past spring, one tree fully bloomed, another tree had maybe a few of the leaves bloom. One didn't bloom. Now let me ask y'all this question. How many of you who have multiple kids, how many of them turn out to be the same? Yeah, none. You can say it loud. No two kids are the same. I've listened to Ike for years talking the difference between Abigail and Danielle. He's made a living talking about that, you know? As parents, we must find out what their bent will be. What their passions, what they're good at, what their strengths are. So how do we pass on God's word? How do we pass on the values to our children? How do we pass on sound theology, the biblical worldview to our kids? Well, you have to understand God's purpose and design for the family, okay? And I want to look at 4 purposes today. And I want you to take good notes today. Because here's number 1, and I talked about this last week. The first purpose for a family is to be a shelter from the storms. Proverbs 14:26. Reverence for the Lord gives a man deep strength. His children have a place of refuge and strength. Is your home a place of refuge and security for your kids, for your grandkids? The Bible says that God created the family to be a shelter in storms. And let me give you 3 facts about storms. Number 1, they're inevitable. Jesus said in John 16:33, in this world you will have troubles. I've said this several times. You're either in a storm coming out of one, or Brad Nitz has one spotted on Doppler radar headed your way. We are never promised a storm-free life from cradle to grave. Never. They're unpredictable. You do not know when they will hit. One phone call, one bad doctor's report. It's amazing how the trajectory of your life can change in a nanosecond. One of Mike and my closest friends, I was on the phone with the other, I had no idea, Terry Nelson, healthiest man that ever lived, almost stroked out. One phone call. They're unpredictable. You don't know when they're going to hit. They're impartial. Matthew 5:45 reads, he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. I love this African proverb that says, rain does not fall on one roof alone. They don't play favorites. They're temporary. They don't last. And here's one thing I've learned. They never leave you where they find you. Now here's the types of storms that we face, and there are many more. There's the change storm. We go through a lot of changes in life, illnesses, graduation, job changes. We move to different locations. We go through so many seasons of life. We go through seasons of loneliness, seasons of self-doubt, seasons of temptation, seasons of loss. But here's one thing, as we go through these changes and as we go through these seasons, the one thing that we need, there needs to be a home that I can go to with a family in it that is a place of safety, a refuge from life's storms. Failure's a storm. You're not always a winner in life. Ecclesiastes 3:1, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. In life of every believer, there's a season of failure. It's not something to be avoided, but embraced. We have a challenging time dealing with failure. We never prepare for failure. I can tell you right now, when I started selling sponsorships for the Egg Drop or the Big Shanty Festival that's today, I didn't pray for rain, right? Lord, let me have all these 100,000 people that rain on them. The problem is we confuse failing with being a failure. We're never a failure unless we give up. In God's economy, there's no such thing as a failure, just forced growth. And we need to learn to teach our kids to include God in their failure. We need to teach them that God has a bigger perspective. Teach them that God has long-range plans for the life that's filled with hope and a bright future. Look at this verse, Hebrews 11:39. It's referred to, Hebrews 11 is God's hall of fame. It's the ones who did it right. But look at this verse. They were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, that only together with us would they be made perfect. They failed here, but not there. God had something better. We also need to learn to teach our kids to forget their failures. Never let them let their failure imprison them. For some of us who've gone through a divorce, or maybe some of us who started a business and it bombed. Or maybe we started ministry and it didn't work out, whatever. Folks, does it mean, well, I'm never gonna love again, I'm never gonna work again? I've said this to you many times up here. You can build Fort Knox around your heart and not let anybody in. But when you do that, you keep the love out. We need to teach our kids to forget their failures, to build their hopes on their dreams, not their past. Rejection is a storm. This is the hardest one to weather. We hate to be rejected, put down, criticized. Kids are cruel. I remember I taught character ed at Kennesaw Mountain for 14 years. And I was team chaplain there, football chaplain, and I remember teaching 11th grade girls. And the reason why I remember that was because Katie Zimmerman at that time was in there. And Katie was dating our middle linebacker, L.A. Cologne. And they wanted me to do their wedding years later, but it was the only wedding I had to cancel out of because, unfortunately, my mother passed away. So that's why I remember this. And I remember in that class that there was a statistic that I was supposed to read that they give you for notes, and these were juniors, that when they were in the 3rd grade, they had a 95% good approval of themselves. They thought good of them. These girls, they thought very highly of themselves. But by the time they were a junior, which is where they were then, they had so many negative strokes, so many attacks, that 95% was now chiseled down to 5%. And I said, is that true? And every one of them looked at me and said, yes. That's why I've heard I teach. Folks, listen. If you're a father of a daughter, the number one thing you guard is their self-esteem. Because they will base their self-esteem on who they think the number one person in their life thinks about them. And it needs to be Jesus. He said, I created you to do great things. You're my masterpiece. Is your home a place of refuge and security? That's why divorce is so painful. The place of acceptance, the place of that's supposed to be a shelter from life's storms, all of a sudden becomes the eye of the storm. Second purpose for the family is to be a learning center for life. Here's a great verse, Psalms 144:12. Good news. May our sons in their youth be like plants that grow up strong. The Bible often compares the family to a garden. It's a place where we grow people. Isaiah 38:19, Living Bible. One generation makes known your faithfulness to the next. Your family is a relay of values, passing on the baton to our children, and they will pass it on to the next generation. That is serious when it comes to think about what we are passing on to our kids and how it affects the future. Jesus said in John 4:38, I sent you to reap where you did not plant. Others had already done work before you, and you will now gather the harvest. We're not the only ones who planted seeds. There were seeds planters long before us. Exodus 34:7 talks about the sins of the fathers being passed down. I talked about this message. Ike's going to be doing a series this summer on growing garden, how serious planting seeds is. And Ike, over the last few weeks, he has shared about, inheriting. He shared about when he first came pastor, about the roof leaks and the things that were here that was going wrong. Folks, I remember the first time I heard about Piedmont Church. Now, I've heard it from Mike because he was preaching over here, and I'd come over. But the first time I heard about Piedmont Church in the community, because remember, I was the community pastor at another church. I came to a Live After Five, which was a joint Live After Five between different business associations. You know, I'm on the board of directors still at the Kennesaw Business Association, the Ackworth Business Association, and they had the Canton Road Business Association. They were hosting this event. And when they get up to talk about all the great things that are happening in their community in Kennesaw and Ackworth, let me tell you what the Canton Road Business Association was talking about. That's what they were called. Now they're Northeast Cobb, but back then they were this. It was Mr. Carroll. He was at his house. He was at Georgia Mountain Springwater. I remember where it was at. Because when I talked about when they were redoing the windows and redoing our sanctuary, that's why it popped in my head. Because here's what he said. He said, when they went up to talk about what was going on in their community, he said, the good in it, he says, Piedmont's rebuilding again. They're remodeling. Our community's fixing to come alive again. Piedmont's remodeling. God's fixing to do something in our community. Folks, that's how much these facilities, I talk about how much we mean to this community, but also this church, what it means to this community. What do you think when we remodel these facilities here, what do you think what message, what is that going to be passing on to this community? How's that going to be echoing? Piedmont's coming alive again. They're going to be passing truth on their kids. What a witness. And folks, let me tell you something. I was talking with Steve Crow. When they decided to do this, Man of Faith, it was during it was 2008. That's when the housing market was all but gone. This church stepped out in faith. And what a witness it was. And that's what they bragged about. The values that we pass on to our kids is their compass to guide them through an ever-changing world. And study after study has shown that the number one indicator of successful children, kids who grow up to be successful adults, is a stable value system. That is cancer. Kids who grow up knowing that is right, this is wrong, make it in this world. Kids who do not flame out. It is taught in the Bible, but it's confirmed in study after study. A stable value system. We all need a foundation. Kids need to know their boundaries. This is right, this is wrong. That is what you do. This is what you don't do. And folks, as Ike has said many times, inconsistent parents produce insecure children. I want you to look at this verse and let me explain why this is so important. Daniel 1:8 reads, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile this way. And I want you to write this down if you're a note taker this morning. I want you to permanently put this when you're thinking about what we're trying to do here in this building campaign. I must learn the truth to discern the lies. Folks, listen. Daniel was 15 years old at this time. He had just graduated from J.J. Daniel Middle School. He's a ninth grader at Sprayberry High School. And his town, Jerusalem, was invaded. They were invaded by the Babylonians, the most powerful empire at that time. And King Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful man in the world. And they took Daniel and some of the young men there, 25% of them, back to Babylonia. They were to be trained in Babylonian culture. They were to be taught all the ideologically. Babylonians were into adultery. They were into sorcery. They were into astrology. It was a 3-year indoctrination program. It was like going to college. And you got to remember, Daniel's parents didn't come with him. He was left alone. They might have been killed during the invasion. He was all by himself. What if something happened to you and your kids were left alone? Some of you, in the next few months, your kids may be going to kindergarten, elementary, middle, high, college, workforce? Are they ready to handle all of the cultural lies, the moral lies, the political lies, on, that this world is all too ready to pass on them, the world's values, and you know them in 1 John 2:16, pleasures, possession, and prestige? Are they ready to handle it? You want to know what Daniel refused to believe? The food that he rejected was put in a pagan temple for a pagan idol to eat. And when the idol did not eat the food was taken to King Nebuchadnezzar. That's why it's called royal food. The food was leftovers from paganism. How many today are okay with living with the lies that the pagan culture is passing on to us? We're living on the leftovers from a pagan culture. Do you know the United States Treasury Department, the way they train their agents to spot a counterfeit dollar bill, how they train them? They don't train them because there's thousands of different counterfeits. They don't just say, study all the counterfeits. What they do is they train them to study the fresh, crisp $1 bill, a $5 bill, a $10 bill, 20. They get them to study that, memorize it, meditate on it, and they know what the real looks like so that they can discern what a fake bill looks like. They study the real so they can determine what is fake. They study the authentic so they can know what's inauthentic. They know the real so they know what's not real. And folks, that's what we need to teach them the word of truth from the word of God so that they can discern the lies down the road. Amen? What do we teach our kids to know the truth and reject the lies? Look at Deuteronomy 6:7. You must teach these commandments to your children and talk about them when you're at home or out for a walk, at bedtime, and the first thing in the morning. Look at the 4 things from this verse. Gosh, this is so rich. Number 1, it says you must teach. Circle you there. That's not the government. That's not the school system. That's not their coaches. That's not their travel ball coaches. That's not their gymnastics coach. You teach it. Notice what it says there. It says you must. In other words, it's not optional. If you're not teaching your kids the truth, these commandments, you're not doing your job. And it says you must teach. And notice where it says to teach. When you're at home, out for a walk, bedtime, first thing in the morning, all the time. And if you're a parent, you're always teaching. If you're a grandparent, you always have eyes watching you. And then it says what to teach. These commandments. Circle that. God did not give us 10 suggestions. He gave us 10 commandments. It's not a matter of think about these and try them if you want to. They might work. No, it's do it. The family is a place of refuge, a learning center for life. And now here's a third. A family is a place to play. Look at Ecclesiastes 9:9. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love. Libby and I just celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary. Look at her. She's so blessed. I'll tell you what. Proverbs 5:19, good news. Be happy with your wife and find your joy with the girl you married. Big question here. Is your home fun? Is your home a haven for happiness? A place to celebrate? A place to kick back, relax, take it easy, and enjoy life? Fun's missing in a lot of homes today. Sometimes, if we're not careful, we can transfer our homes from a learning center into a boot camp. So many homes today just need to lighten up. I read a bumper sticker that says, the family that prays together stays together. No, the family that plays together stays together. In our home, at our house, Matthew is our social chairman. He's our specialist. Folks, he's the one that brings us places where he wants to go. He loves going anywhere. He don't matter what game he wants to go to. He loves everything about the game. He'll film the band marching. It doesn't matter to Matthew. Matthew will bring us places to go out and eat. Matthew will bring us, hey, he'll even bring the calendar, and we got to put it down. Hey, when are we going to Dollywood? Libby and I are the oldest people in the park half the time. Libby can count every step. She knows the exact steps that it goes to climb up some of them rides at Whitewater. Our kids take us places that we would never go. Our middle son, Jacob, played 42 college ball games. We made every one of them. Still don't know how we did it. He took us to little towns and places that folks, we would have never gone to. Never gone to. Have fun with your kids in your home. Because folks, listen, if you do not have fun with your kids, don't be surprised when they grow up that they don't want to come back. Think of it this way, and Daniel's going to talk about it more next week. When the prodigal son was in the pig pen, and I love what Luke 15:17 says. It says, when he had come to his senses, he thought about home. What do you think about? Place of safety? A learning center? Was it fun? When our kids are gone and they mess up and they need to come home, will they come home? Will they remember those things? Last thing, the family is a launching pad for ministry. You may never thought of your family being a ministry team together, but it will unify your family and bring more joy than anything else you do if you have some projects and you serve together. That's what I love about our Love Does projects. Nothing that loves me more when I'm sitting out there in the East Hall, when I see children bringing in the bags of groceries, when I see them bringing in the undies, the soups, the laundry detergent, that the families teaching them. It's awesome to see. Look at this verse, 1 Corinthians 16:15, Living Bible. Stephanas and his family were the first to become Christians in Greece, and they're spending their lives helping and serving Christians everywhere. What a great goal to have as a ministry team, to feel your family to be a ministry team. To see your family being a launching pad for the kingdom of God. How do you do it? By serving others. Psalms 128:3 reads, your sons will be like olive shoots around your table. Let me tell you, the olive tree is a symbol of vitality. It lives for thousands of years, and it produces fruit. But when it maximizes its fruit production, they cut it down when it's done, and then they cut it down to a stump, and a little olive shoot will come up. They take that olive shoot and they put it into the ground, and then it grows up, and then it produces fruit. It's a beautiful picture of our family, our kids taking on the family ministries. In my home growing up, our family business was community service. They're at 10204 West Mansfield Road in Fairdale, Kentucky. My father was a volunteer fire department. He was a volunteer fireman. He was a fire chief for 15 of those years. He was a volunteer fireman for 35 years. My father served the community like no other. He was there in that community whenever there was something going on, the firehouse was there. An unbelievable role model for me. God could not have placed me with a better father that showed me what community service was all about than my father, Jim Longacre. And I always remember the last thing my father ever said to me alive. It was at Audubon Hospital. My dad was dying of cancer. He had tubes all up in him. And he looks over me and he says, you know, son, if God would give me a little more time, you know what I would do? And I said, what, Dad? He said, I'd give it all to young people. And it kind of hit me hard because I thought, man, that's all he ever did. He parked cars at all the ball games. He concession stands. He fixed the corn dogs. He drove the bus for my brother's teams. And I said, why is that, Dad? And here's what he said. He said, because they need somebody. For 25 years, our family business has been taking the church to the community, and we have built all of the community ministries around children. We have been at Piedmont That's Somebody for the kids who are out. But now the family business is changing a bit in our home. At 1618 Duxbury Lane in Kennesaw, Georgia. Many of you know my youngest son, Matthew, is autistic. My wife is a special needs parapro. She's been a special needs pre-K parapro, an elementary parapro, a middle school parapro. She's been in high school. She's now a transitions parapro. My middle son, Jacob, is a special needs teacher at Allatoona High School. He'll be at North Cobb High School this year. Nobody in Cobb County has been to more IEP meetings than the Longacres. We've set the record. Folks, Daniel today is teaching in 301, about your shape and your spiritual gifts. And if you've heard I talk about shape, that E there is for experiences, where we have experiences in our life, vocational, relational, spiritual, painful experiences. Folks, we have been through what we've gone through to help others get through what they're going through. And in this new building, there's going to be 2 new Wonder Rooms for special needs. We have put in now we'll have 39 sensory rooms in there for kids in the community. We will have access to their families for them to come here. And we can start a family ministries with them. So many of them are going through. I talked with the family yesterday at the Big Shanty. We have people who can help them with their finances. We have Jeff Wright who helped Libby and I through ours. We got Ricky Elrod who can help. We got Ed Miller that can help them with their finances as they prepare. We can host with our conference center transition talks to help these families. We can launch these ministries. Let me ask you something. What family ministry is your family launching? When you're gone, what family business is your kids and your grandkids going to take over? Let me close with this. Some of you today, you don't have kids. I get it, some of you are single. Let me remind you of 2 things. Don't discount the family that you already have. Your mom, dad, brothers, sisters, nieces, nephews. Don't ignore your family. And then I want all of you to remember this, that you are a part of a bigger family, the church family. Galatians 6:10 says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. Because everything that God intended for the biological family, He intended for the Piedmont church family. Folks, Piedmont Church is a place of refuge and security for people who've lost, that need to find their way back to Jesus. We are a learning center for life. We have some of the best Bible studies here. We have some of the best Bible teachers. We have great women's groups, couples groups, young married couples groups. We've got some of the best Bible teachers here. We are a place to have fun. This place comes alive with our children's ministries. And folks, we are a place where you use the skills and the talents and the way that God has gifted you. Piedmont Church, we want you to showcase their talents here. Showcase your talents here so that we can reach this community for Jesus Christ. I'll close with this. Bill Purvis, the pastor at Cascade Hills in Columbus, he said this. Every day you hold in your hand the seeds to the field that one day you're going to be standing in. Will it change the seeds that you're planting today for your family? Are you intentional about, is your home a place of refuge and security? a learning center, a place to have fun? Will it change the way that you want to see your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren grow up? Would you stand with me? The altar's open today for you to come and pray for your families, for your children's families, for your grandchildren, for the way that we're going to touch people in this community. The altar's open today. Maybe some of you today need to get your unhealed, get your hurts healed up with God. I pray today that you just come down front today. Get it right with Jesus. The altar's open today for you to come and pray. Would you pray? Father, it's serious, the seeds that we're planting today. When I saw that quote by John Wesley that what generation tolerates, the next will embrace. Lord, it takes this campaign to another level of speaking truth to the life of our kids. And I pray today that people come in here today will say, what can I do? Maybe they'll pray for their kids, for their grandkids, and for their homes, and for their homes. And Father, maybe some of their homes today has become an eye of a storm and it needs to get healed. Maybe their homes need to be a place of play, that we focus so much on wanting to accomplish that maybe we've lost our kids in the process of just having fun. Lord, I don't know what people are going through today, but I do know one thing, Lord. This church is a testimony to this community, whether it's through serving, through Love Does, but also, Lord, the facilities and everything. It means everything to this community. There is no city. There's no city hall. Piedmont Church is the glue. And I pray, Lord, that we become a light to this world and be known that we're going to be speaking truth in the lives of children here at this place. And that's my prayer as people come and pray. In Jesus Christ's name I pray. Amen.